But again, kind of getting an insight to a lot of this information, it's very hard, you know, again, to bring this information in a way that extrapolates some kind of sense to beings here, I mean, and not have a sense of urgency with it too as well, because so much is converging for the human race right now. It's hard to not, you know. So.
Do you have any thoughts on Africa?
Or what's going on there right now?
And what's been going on for a long time, but right now specifically, and also over the years with Ghana, Angola, now in Africa, obviously, creative civilization started, and it's such a horrible place all the time.
Yeah, in terms of like the war and the genocides and things like that.
What do the Syrian Council and you guys say about all the death and you know?
Well, a lot of what is going on, you know, I mean, the Syrian Council talks about that there are races in the Phantom Matrix that use human consciousness as redemptive vehicles. There is no regard for those levels of consciousness, and so the beings that are preyed upon are those levels of consciousness, you know, that can be preyed upon, and that it's purpose to suck energy into other sources, because it's a parasitized system of the Phantom Matrixes and the beings that work to keep consciousness suppressed and us in war with each other. I mean, they are all divisive conflicts that are placed in the human race to keep us in separateness instead of oneness. You know, we can already see that in the power elite as well. Why is it that we don't care what goes on outside of the United States? You know what I'm saying? There's still an us versus them mentality. Well, that is perpetrated by not only our own, let's say, maybe lack of awareness, but at this point, the Syrian Council really feels, and that's why there has been intervention with the Indigo races and this particular level of data, because this wasn't really a part of the creational matrix, right? We were here in agreement to take part of a biological evolution of the human species, and it was a free will system, but we became locked in a fishbowl, and the controllers of the holograms started to perpetrate lots of various you know, let's say, you know, keeping the human race divisive and unevolved so that we were constantly in primal barbaric behavior, which is really kind of a hallmark of a species that really doesn't care about the human being, really doesn't. I've been much more aware of recently of enslavement programs for the human race. And this isn't something I was ever really, you know, interested or involved in, but, you know, they've been giving me a lot more information, probably because now I can take it. Before I wasn't ready to handle it, you know. But these programs are definitely in place to keep us in separation, to keep us in killing each other, and to instigate war and divisiveness. And it's all about, there are preferential races that do the bidding, trickle-down effect. You know, it's kind of like selling your soul for power, whatever that is. And, you know, whether it's the Illuminati or groups of beings that are getting the benefit of that, that's what it's all about. It's about those that have power and those that don't. And they keep, you know, perpetrating that cycle. And so what's interesting is that goes on in the physical realm, but it's also going on in the multidimensional realms, at least under the 12th dimensions. They basically say that the Antichrist energies, and they do refer to it as that, and what they just mean is reverse life codes. The 12th dimension and above is the eternal life current, of which we expand into source. The energies below it have been using reverse life currents, and that's to degenerate the human species, so that we genetically digress.
Ethnicity or anything like that?
With ethnicity?
Yeah, I mean whether Asian, African American, what have you.
It's more like soul groups, you know, because soul groups, what happens is, say, okay, a soul group with a consciousness with a certain level of its own awareness keeps incarnating into a certain cycle of incarnation because it doesn't know anything else. And it has, because I think what we think of is when we leave our bodies, we think the angels show up and show us this whole thing, but that's not actually how it works. Wherever we're at in our evolution as a being is what we are connected to. So if you're a being that has come into the earth and you're constantly in pain and suffering, when you leave your body, you're going to be in pain and suffering. You know, you may be chosen because what's happening now is you're still trapped into this level of incarnating over and over again, and that's how the controller set it up. So that the human consciousness, who actually is multidimensional and connected to all of these different levels, doesn't know that, and this information is kept from them. And that's why the intervention at the Ascension Cycle. So the interesting thing to note is that the Ascension Cycle, because of the Stargate openings and the changes in the way these matrices work, that's what's important to understand, is that the Ascension is very much a mechanics of physics, of how time-space, these creational matrices work. Because one of the biggest questions people ask is, why can't they help us? Why can't the guides do something? When they started to talk to me about the way the matrices work, I started to understand a lot more that this area has been capped off, literally. It's almost impossible for them to come down here without us calling them in. Because of the way the creational physics work, they can't come down. Think about, you know, when we are using the music of the spheres, or where you're doing a tuning fork, what happens is the highest vibrating thing, whatever that vibration is, brings up the next octave to that level. So we can bring in energy much more easily than they can squeeze themselves down here, and especially without us opening this space. They call this creating a handshake. If most of humanity is cut off from its soul and has absolutely no interest in cultivating that connection, there's literally no room for them to try to get down to communicate with us, except through the Indigo races and the beings that have the contract that said, okay, I'll go in there and hopefully I'll wake up and I'll be able to transmit this data without anybody, you know, thinking I'm crazy.